Welcome back to another episode of Aaron's Tech Corner, and today what I'm going to do is talk about adding a mmWave radar human presence detection. Ooh, that's a mouthful. Or basically the fancy little radar motion sensors that use the 2.4 gigahertz frequency to detect if there's a human presence in the room. I'm going to be using the LD2410B, which is this little guy right here, and you can kind of see him. These are the Highlink HLK2410B modules, and you can buy these on Amazon from $10 or on like AliExpress for around $3, so not too bad, and they're pretty small. This one's really tiny. There are different form factors like this 2410B, and then there's the C model, which is a little bit more rectangular and easier to solder to. This is the C model here. You can see it's piggybacked right here on like an ESP8266. But basically, I want to use the this one because of its form factor. So I'm going to be soldering some tiny wires to this guy and then hooking this up. And the idea is here that I'm going to use a Ultrapro smart switch, so a Wi-Fi based smart switch, which is this guy, and this is one of the Ultrapro WFD 4001 switches. And these guys actually they come with just using Ultrapro's cloud service, which is basically a Tuya cloud. And what we're going to do with this is use the Cloudcutter software to break this from the cloud so we can flash it with ESPhome. And then after we're done with that, we can crack it open with these 4 screws and go ahead, get into it, and wire up some wires for this presence sensor so that basically the little ESP8266 compatible microprocessor can talk to this sensor and we can use it to get presence. And then to top it all off, we're going to make this hidden behind the wall. So I made a 3D printed custom bracket here. If you're familiar with the Eaton wall plates, they're these nice, handy, screwless wall plates. And these guys are pretty cool because they just you would attach them to your switch like this, and then they just snap onto the wall. So what they've got is basically a bracket, and we'll just go in here and show you this. This is the stock wall bracket, and what you do with this guy is, you put this switch in your wall box first, and then you screw this plate to the switch, and then you just snap the little over piece on top of it. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to make this plate here hold the presence sensor. So what I've done is, like I was just showing, I've got a 3D printed facsimile of this, and on the back side is where all the magic is. And you can see I've got a little cutout slot that happens to just fit this sensor perfectly. So once it's time to slide this in here, you would kind of just put it in at an angle, give it a good push, and it'll snap in. And that will hold this thing right next to your switch. So your switch is going to go through here. I've got some wires on here so you can't see that, but this is going to basically, oh sorry, it actually goes this way. So yeah, it goes like this. And then you're going to have a little set of wires that connect from the bottom up here, all going into one of these little vents in the top, and then just solder into the CPU there. So this is actually going to be a pretty cool solution, and it's completely seamless. And then when you're done, your presence sensor will be behind there and hidden behind this wall plate, and you won't be able to see it. It'll be completely stealth and work perfectly. I've already got one of these in use, and I'm just going to show you the process. So let's go ahead and move on over to the cloud cutting step. Word of safety warning, this is going to be wired into my mains. You don't want to touch any of this stuff barehanded. You can shock yourself. I'm not responsible for any damage you do to yourself or your house or burning anything down. Be safe, be cautious. Use insulated tools, use insulated gloves, that kind of thing. Or better yet, maybe just install that into a wall first where it's a little safer. But I'm going to use my bench supply here, and I'm going to go ahead and plug it in. Get it powered up. And we are going to do that right now. So this guy is going to boot up, and maybe what you'll see, there we go, you can see it's blinking, and it's a fast blink. Now the Ultrapro switch, one of the things that's really nice about it, and I'm going to be very careful here, is has a top and a bottom switch. You hear that click, that's the relay, so when you turn the switch on, you push up, push down, and turn it off. And it has a little hidden third switch right here, which is actually right here, and it's a programming switch. So what we do is we hold this down for like 5 or 6 seconds. Eventually, this guy should go into a programming mode. In theory. It's going to hopefully make a liar out of me. Well, it should be in programming mode, so we'll come back to that if that's not the case. But so what we're going to do is we're going to use Cloudcutter, and I have a Raspberry Pi 3B, just like the early non-B plus version, running Cloudcutter. I'm not going to go ahead and talk about how to install Cloudcutter, and I won't go into super big details about how to do it, just because there are some great other documentations and guides out there on how to do it. DigiBlur actually did a really, really wonderful guide on this. So let's go ahead and cut on over to our computer. And here we are. All right, so I'm logged in to my cloud cutting machine. And I'm going to try to remember where everything is. Oh, here it is, Tuya Cloud Cutter. So I'm going to change directories into my Tuya Cloud Cutter directory here. And then I've already run this before, so it actually should be nice and have everything kind of come up pretty quick. So we'll just do a /Tuya Cloud Cutter and a /R for Raspberry Pi. And it will go ahead and say it's building its Docker image. And the first time you do this, when you build it, it will take a very long time, like 20-30 minutes, and you'll be like, is this thing stuck or whatever, especially on these older, slower Pis. If you've got a Pi 4, it's probably faster. And you can see I screwed up. Bonus points if you know what I did wrong. It's pretty easy. I forgot to run this as a super user. So you do your sudo or sudo or whatever you want to, however you want to say it, /Tuya Cloud Cutter .sh or -r. Okay, so now we see it's building the image, and it's going to build pretty quick because it's been done before. All right, so when the prompt comes up, it's asking, what do we want to do? Do we want to detach this from the cloud and run the firmware locally, or do we want to run third-party firmware? We want to run third-party firmware, so we're going to select option 2 and hit enter. And now it's going to load options, and we are going to please wait. All right, so now it says, how do you want to select this? Are you going to use your own firmware, or are you going to you want to search for it by manufacturer device name? The great thing is a lot of these cloud cutting devices already have profiles. This happens to be one that does. Let's go ahead and just choose the default by manufacturer /device name, hit enter, and then we're going to scroll down, and we'll just keep on going until we get to the U. Of course, it's the very end, right? All right, we want to go to Ultrapro, and here we go. We have a WFD 4001 light switch. I'm not sure what version of firmware these came with. I actually, when I did my other ones, came in a 2-pack. I did version 1.16 and I had no problem, so that's what I'm going to choose. I would assume that if you need to know the firmware, you could actually join the device with the Ultrapro app on your phone and probably do a firmware update, get the latest firmware, but I know this worked with my other one, so I'm going to try this again here. So I'm going to hit enter on this, and it is going to say what firmware do we want. There's only one option. Let's just choose that. And it is now going to start taking a look, and it's going to tell me, go ahead and put this thing in programming mode. But, well, actually, no, first it's going to ask me what I want to put on here. Some people use OpenBeacon. That's something I haven't messed with. I like ESPhome, and that's what I'm going to do with this because that's what I'm most familiar with. Now, when you use ESPhome, it's going to load an ESPhome Kickstart, which we can then use to flash with our own custom ESP ESPhome YAML code, which I will show, but this requires basically an offshoot of ESPhome running the Libre Tuya variant of ESPhome, which again, the DigiBlur's great guide shows how to do that. And eventually, I'm sure it will all be merged into one, and then we won't have to worry about this. But for now, this is how we're doing it. We're going to choose ESPhome and hit enter. And it is going to say place your device in a slow blink mode. And then, yeah, it's going to look for it. So, this is where I want to make sure that I'm in programming mode. Which is a bit tricky on these guys. This thing is being finicky. And it is not easily going into programming mode. Why don't you want to go to programming mode? Alright, so what I'm going to do here, I'm going to switch back to the camera because this is something that I think would be really interesting for people to see. That we want to, I'm going to go ahead and unplug this guy. Because I'm going to crack the top of it open. And I'm just going to use a really thin blade. Like a little thin bladed screwdriver like that. Just flat one. Okay, we are unplugged from main. So what we're going to do to get into this guy, first we want to take this paddle off. So I'm just going to kind of grab this and pop up. And push in on that tab and pop up. Now you see I grab this and I can kind of just pull it straight out and off. Now, what does this give me? This gives me a couple of different things. And one of them should be the darn programming button, which is here somewhere. It's right there. Okay, so it wasn't inside. It wasn't on the switch. It's on the side. It's this little white button, right? All right. Now I feel dumb. But hey, you got to feel dumb with me. Or you got to watch me feel dumb in real time. So let's go ahead and put this switch back together. Just pop it back in. So now we got to push that button. So let's go ahead and turn this guy back on. I suppose watching someone else fail is part of the learning experience for both me and for you, right? I don't do these videos very often, these little tutorials, so I don't remember all the steps, but this is definitely one to watch out for. So let's let this thing come back up on its own. Should be booting up one of these days. Make sure you are plugged in still. Yep, you are plugged in. Well, no, you're not. Plugged in the wrong plug. So again, oops. Alright, so now it's plugged in. There we go, there's our blue light. Okay, so very carefully I'm going to hold this and not electrocute myself. I'm going to push this little tab. There we go. There we go. Now you see that light slow, or it's actually just going there. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to my other screen here, and you can see that it was, in the meantime, trying to connect, and it did. So it actually connected up to that switch, and it's doing its thing. Alright, so it is scanning for its access point. It found one, and you could verify that on your phone. You could look in there and see that you see an access point called Ultrapro dash whatever the 4 digits that it's got, and it's going to go ahead and connect to that thing here. So it is saying it can't connect. So I think I've got to go ahead and push this button again. Okay, push that button again. Now it found it and it's going to connect. Maybe it will connect. It's going to prove me wrong because that's what stuff does when you're trying to do it in front of a camera. That's just how things are. Technology is interesting sometimes. Okay, so here we go. Now it looks like it's going to actually do its thing. It found it. I found my wireless LAN on my Cloudcutter box, and now it is going to go ahead, do its thing. Slowly but surely. There we are. So it's starting to do some thinking here. There we go. Flashing the firmware. Bingo. 15 seconds. Sweet. Okay. So there, the device now has been cloud cut. So now what I've got to do is wait for, like I said, like 30 seconds and look for some signs of activity. So now what I will do is shrink this terminal window. And I'm going to go to my Wi-Fi on my Mac here, to other networks, and you will see up in the right hand corner I have something called Kickstart-BK7231T. That is the ESPhome Kickstart firmware that it loaded. So I'm going to connect to it, and that should pop up the browser. Bingo. So there is that's our switch right there. It's connected, right? So very cool. So now what we can do is we can connect to our network here. I'm going to just connect to my Internet of Things, or I don't have to do that actually, because what I'm going to do instead is I'm just going to upload the firmware directly to this for what I want to do. So I'm going to skip this whole step, but you could join your IoT network and your machine, and then actually go ahead and find it in ESPhome on your home device. But I'm going to skip that step. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to leave this alone. I wanted to minimize that, but I guess it's not going to let me do that. All right. So I'm going to go into my Libre Tiny ESPhome, which this is the small version of the ESPhome. And you can see I've got something in here already called Playroom Lights-01, and it's online. That's my other already hacked and cut one, right? So I'm going to actually just go ahead and take this code here and just make a copy of it, because I've already got this thing set up. So what I want to do is just do copy, and I'm going to make a new device down here by clicking new device. There we are. Continue. Going to create a configuration, and I'm going to call this one Closet. Oh no, wait, not Closet. This is going to be we're going to call it Liam's Bedroom Dash Lights. because it's going to be the light switch for my son's room. It happens to be named Liam. And I'm going to choose a LibreTiny, and it's going to ask you what board's in this thing, and this has a WB3S. So we choose WB3S, hit next. I'm going to hit skip because we're just going to go straight to the YAML here. So you can see it made a nice YAML, right? But I'm going to go ahead and just cut back all of this stuff and up to this point and just do a paste, and then I am going to just nuke the ESPhome section here. And this is where you'd want to get this code, and I will make this available on my Get page, which will be in the video links. But basically, you know, you have your Wi-Fi, your switch fallback, in case the thing would join Wi-Fi, and then the basic ESP definitions, relays on, I guess, pin or P26 on the device, and then I'm choosing P23 for the occupancy pin on the LD2410. So basically, the LD2410 has a occupancy pin. It has a pin that turns high when the actual there's presence in the room. So I'm going to just go back to my switch here and show you here on this little guy, this little radar thing here. And it's hard to kind of see there, but this little pin on the bottom here that's marked 1, that is an output, and that is just a single wire that just is going to be soldered onto the board of this switch. That's going to tell it what the occupancy is of the room. So if there's somebody in the room, then that thing's going to, you know, turn on. And then there's also some power, you know, power and ground that you've got to wire up too. But we're going to do that next. So for right now, I'm going to go back and show you the rest of this code here. Okay, so in the code there, you've got your different binary sensors for turning the button, you know, what the on button and the off button do, which is turning on and off a relay, basically, to turn on and off your lights. Then I add the last thing, which is the platform GPIO, pin GPIO 23. GPIO 23 is the pin I'm using. So that I have as, and since this is my other one's occupancy playroom, I'm just going to call this one occupancy Liam's room and just leave it as the name occupancy. And then hit save and then install. And I'm going to do manual download and say modern format. And this is where it's going to take a while. So I'm probably going to have to just fast forward through this mess because these things typically don't go very fast. My server is a Raspberry Pi 4, so I would imagine that if I had something a little bit higher end, this would go a lot quicker.
Okay, media will play loud.
All right, and you can see that finished up after several minutes, so 5 or so minutes, and downloaded. So I am going to close this. Maybe I'll close it. I'm going to shrink it down here, go to my Mac drive. You might have Windows, I'm just using my Mac. Works on either one. All right, so in here I've got this Liam's bedroom lights.uf2, which is that firmware. It's not .bin like it would normally be in ESPhome. All right, so now I have firmware. So what I'm going to do is go back to this thing here. Just go to OTA update, choose file. Oh, that's right. This thing is a pain. Okay, so it's a fun thing on the Mac, right? Sometimes this doesn't work. So 192.168.4.1 on my network. I'm going to remember that. I'm going to open Safari instead because for some reason Chrome is being dumb. So I'm going to go to 192.168.4.1. All right, so now we're here. Choose file. I don't know why it does that. you know, just because Chrome is my default browser, and for some reason Chrome just doesn't like to open that. It's like a, maybe it's like an ad blocker thing or something. Maybe, yeah, I'll have to check into that. But so we choose that UF2 firmware, hit upload, and oops, sorry. Then we just hit update, right? And you can kind of see this little bar up here is moving. It's thinking about it. Update successful. Okay, so now what's going to happen is the switch should reboot itself, and then it should just disappear off Wi-Fi in here, right? Like I shouldn't see it in my other networks. Like I won't see. Yeah, I don't see. These are all my neighbors. They've all got fun names, but yeah, there is no kick dash whatever in there, so that's going to disappear. So now what we're going to do is go back to our guy here. I'm just going to click save to make sure I've got that. And then there, actually, you can see there it is. It's online too, right? So you can click on logs, wireless, and we can view the logs off the switch. Cool. So now if I push the up paddle on the up one here, you can hear it click, and see it sends the state on and off. Now it sends the state off. You're not going to see anything from the occupancy pin right now because that's not hooked up. So that's the next step. All right, so you can join me in the next part here, and I will go ahead and disassemble that switch and show you all the fancy soldering and all that stuff that you got to do to actually get that thing connected, and then you'll see it work. But that is the first part of this series, and showing how to install an LD2410 B or C, or just any of those modules, using a Ultrapro wireless switch. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode.